But this is a triumph for PlayStation in a big way. They needed this. I'm happy for PlayStation Nation. I'm happy as a platformer guy myself. I'm very much enjoying this. This is a absolute love letter to anyone that is a platform fan, anyone that is an OG PlayStation fan that appreciates some of the characters that's come through that brand. I am one of those. This is fantastic. But I just want to be very clear here. If you don't like platformers, there is nothing about this game that you're going to like. I'm going to 100% tell you this is a platform, MF platforming type of game. It is true. It's a true sequel, in my opinion. Again, only 3.5 hours in. I got up at 2 o'clock in the morning and started playing. Stayed up for an hour, went back to sleep, got up at 6, started playing, and I've been playing ever since, and I'm loving it. But if you are not a PlayStation platformer kind of a guy, like you enjoy Sly Cooper, Jack and Daxter back in the days, even Ratchet and Clank, you are not going to like this game. You're just not. It is very controller focused, meaning the DualSense is used to its absolute limitations in the best way possible. So if you don't like the DualSense and you don't like platformers, rest assured you are not going to like this game. Make no mistake on that. But Korkenstein, I have an article here from GameRex.com. It was written by Wade Divini. Posted yesterday. It's about a 1-minute read. And it has confirmation here that Astrobot cost only, and I'm being not being facetious, but I'm just being like honest compared to the budgets that these games are costing these days, only $20 million to make. And that is pretty good considering the fanfare. Now, this is obviously already slated by many as a Game of the Year contender. They're not wrong. It's got a very high Metacritic. My concern is whether or not the actual PlayStation Nation gets out and buys the game.
Yeah,
we will have to see. But Korkenstein, let's get a couple of things here. Let's get your playtime experience. What are your thoughts? What are your theories? And more importantly, let's get back to how PlayStation actually needed this W.
Yeah, so it's been an absolute blast. So far, I gave impressions on my Twitter account about it. So far, it's a 10 out of 10 for me. Just from the audio, the visual, just like the play style, the gameplay, all of it has put a smile on my face. I grew up with the PlayStation. PlayStation. I had a PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, and now PlayStation 5. But I also have had Xbox. And I just prefer that to be my primary console. But with that said, yeah, I mean, there's so much nostalgia that's coming back. Like you say, it's a love letter to platformers, which is true. It's also really a love letter to PlayStation. They pretty much have so much nostalgia packed in that, you're going to see a lot of stuff. You're like, oh yeah, I remember that game, or, oh wow, that character, there's a lot of really cool stuff like that. And then, so basically for those that don't know, the story is very, very heavily PlayStation involved.
Yes.
So you're basically flying in space. Alien takes a CPU from your ship, and your ship's actually a PlayStation 5, and you're basically trying to rebuild your PlayStation 5 ship to fly again. That's basically what the narrative is. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's really cool. I've just had an absolute blast with it. I'm trying to think. It doesn't really take away from anything, I don't think. Like, I would think, that would seem kind of cringy for a lot of people, like throwing, the PlayStation 5 in there, but it honestly just naturally fits with Astrobot, especially to see where they've come, where Astrobot was pretty much practically a tech demo for the PlayStation 5 and DualSense to now this full-fledged release. It's amazing what they've done with this title and what they've done with this IP. So yeah, so far I said 10 out of 10. I'm about to finish the second world. I think I'm one world away from the boss. The boss fights are pretty awesome too, very innovative. There's just a lot of really cool things that this does right. This is a new standard for platformers, in my opinion. I mean, at least until Mario comes out. But because Mario's always going to be king. of platformers, but I think it puts a lot of pressure on anybody else entering the platformer next gen market that it has to live up to this level of hype, and just gameplay and everything like that. With that said, yeah, this is a big win for PlayStation. They really needed this. Like I said, we've learned from the leaks that they ballooned their budgets, which brought low margins. You mentioned, Spider-Man. That's not even including the per console sold. They had to give Disney a part of that money of all the stuff that was Spider-Man or sold with it. So not only that, they're paying royalties on top of that, or licensing fees. So that's another thing, which is why it's like 351 dollars, but for something that's only 20 million, it's just absolutely amazing. The gameplay is very basic, but it's very rewarding and fulfilling. So PlayStation needed this. They really, really did. They've just kind of floundered the last 2 years, and they've rested on their laurels. This is why I always say that it reminds me of the PS3 era. Of when they released, they kind of got, they had an amazing PlayStation 2 year, gen that was absolutely awesome. And then they got way too comfortable. They released a console that was very overpriced. They didn't have a very great launch schedule. And it just kind of floundered to start. Eventually it kind of grew out of it. It did the Xbox 360 kind of thing, or the Xbox One, to where at the end of its life cycle, it was pretty great towards the end. So they definitely needed this. Concord, like I said, we've beaten that horse to death, or that pony to death, I guess you could say. It failed. It bombed. I hope they do come back as free to play. I think it does. The game does have legs. It's a fun game. It's very was polished for me. I didn't see a lot of bugs. So I hope they come back as free to play. I hope they come to Xbox. Honestly, I think they need it. You can't lock free to play games behind one ecosystem. Speaking of that, Steam, big miss. I could see the thought process. This is a very heavily PlayStation focused narrative. You're flying a PS5, and your other ship is a DualSense controller. So with that said, it's a big miss for Steam. This would have drawn a lot of hype into, people would have gone out and gotten a DualSense controller. People would have been invested in those people that were PlayStation gamers that have now moved to PC, would have been like, oh wow, this is what I'm missing. There's so much nostalgia here. Why don't I have a PlayStation 5? That's the kind of thought process that gets started. So for them to just miss out on Steam, especially when we've already found out that half their players are still on PS4, this is a PS5 only game. So you're missing 50% of your market right now, purely because you don't want to branch out and do other things. It's just a weird decision. But like I said, Sony's been very weird. They're fighting multi-platform for some unknown reason, while Xbox is fully doubling down on it. It's a really weird strategy that is not going to play out how they think it will. So that's pretty much it. Astrobot 1010, really weird move for Steam. Sony needed this big win.
So it is everything I could have asked for, and a bag of chips. Let's get your hot take, Buzzing.
Well, first I'd like to start off saying this is probably not a game for me. While I played the first one when I got my PS5, it was a pack-in game. Awesome tech demo. Greatly appreciated the feedback, the haptic feedback in the controller for a lot of the different environments and things, which they do deserve credit for. But much like I complained about from the get-go, no other games really take that to that next level for that controller the rest of the way, even their first party. The lowest setting on Astrobot doesn't even it's even 10 times stronger than the strongest setting on any other game. So I'm disappointed in how the haptics have been used throughout other games. But for Astrobot, the first one, it was great. Now, overall, I'm not high on the platforming list. That's why I keep on telling a lot of people I'm not a Nintendo guy. Never really cared for Nintendo. Was more of a Sega kid and wasn't playing the platformers there. Was playing the arcade games there. So once again, it's a bit of a miss for me, but I can understand why people are excited for it, and especially on the PlayStation side. Like like you said, this is pretty much the highlight they've had over the past couple of years. Sure, some will say, oh, Rise of the Ronin or Stellar Blade or something like that, but those sold like 1 million copies or less, and there's still no more buzz about them. Things that probably should have also landed on PC, which I agree, this should have landed on PC as well. On top of that, I think it should have also landed where they had a PSVR 2 interaction type of thing, whether it's just 1 or 2 levels or a handful of the levels. There should have been some integration of the PSVR 2 with this. Like I said from the launch of the PSVR 2, they probably need to do an Astrobot-like thing for it, much like they did for the controller at the beginning of the PS5 generation. So it's a bit of a miss that they didn't do anything with the PSVR 2, but we all know why in that regard. As far as when it comes to the PS4 player base, like Korkenstein is right. There's like half of them are still on that PS4. What better way to entice them? Although I'm gonna be honest, I don't foresee this being the killer app that encourages the PS4 owner to upgrade to the PS5, but at least have like a demo that is like one level and say continue playing on a PS5, and maybe that will be that little nudge on some of the people that are on the fence, or maybe when the PS5 Pro comes out, whenever they choose to announce that. But that would be the thing to kind of lure some of the PS4 crowd into considering buying a PS5 or a PS5 Pro for this game and upcoming games, because Lord knows they need a roadmap at this time. But overall, it's good to see that people are enjoying the game. I'm not going to crap on somebody's, favorite game or a game that they're enjoying. That's not what this hobby is about. But for me, this really isn't going to be anything that's on my, buy list or watch list at this point. Like, if anything, I still think this should be a pack in for the PS5 Pro whenever they announce that.
Interesting. That's a good theory.
But outside of that, as far as Game of the Year nominations, of course, Keeley is going to give this a nod before, anything else is even remotely put into that basket. Black Myth Wukong will probably be in there as well. Unfortunately, I get the feeling that they're going to, snub Hellblade 2. I know that there's some people that enjoyed it, some people that didn't. I happen to enjoy it even more so than the first. And then with Indiana Jones, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to make the timing or the cutoff for that. So as good as it's going to be, it won't matter for this year, and it'll probably be forgotten by next year. But good on PlayStation for releasing this. Bad on PlayStation for not offering it on Steam or Epic. Bad on PlayStation for not integrating the PSVR or at least having a Astrobot-like game for the PSVR 2, considering, but I guess they've already washed their hands of it for the most part. But overall, it's good that they finally have a highlight. Now we just need PlayStation to show up with a showcase to let us know what we're going to be looking forward to after Astrobot. I'm not going to get into the length of the game, not going to get into any of that stuff, but I would really like to know more from PlayStation on something like a Ghost of Tsushima 2 or something to that effect, or maybe Cory Barlog's, sci-fi rumored game that he might be working on. Those are things that are more of my, highlight as far as what I would be looking forward to from them. But I can understand with Astrobot being a platformer where there aren't that many outside of what's on Nintendo, it's a good move on their part.